All right, good morning, class. So today we will be reviewing developmental theories as reviewed in your textbook. And today we're specifically going to be discussing the behavioral approach. So our agenda for today, we'll go over a brief background of behaviorism, we'll talk about different pioneers of behaviorism, and then we're going to discuss specific theories within behaviorism, such as classical conditioning. We're going to talk about what Watson did with behaviorism, and then we're also going to talk about operant conditioning. All right. So behaviorism emerged in the early 20th century. There are two key components to behaviorism. You'll see them over here on the right side of the screen. So it is observable behavior and external stimuli. These are the two major key components of behaviorism. Remember that, okay? Now, behaviorism developed this theory of learning, which the definition of that is that we focus on how we are conditioned to behave or respond to events or stimuli in the environment. So that definition is coming directly from your textbook. I'll say it again. So we focus on how we are conditioned to behave or respond to events or stimuli in the environment. Now, another major component of behaviorism is that there is no reference to the mind. So you'll see the big circle with the line through it, no reference to the mind. Observable behavior is the basis of psychology, okay? Three pioneers of behaviorism we're going to talk about mainly. The first one is Ivan Pavlov. He was around from 1849 to 1936, and he was actually a Russian psychologist who influenced early behaviorism in the United States. And then we have John B. Watson from 1878 to 1958. And finally, we have B.F. Skinner from 1904 to 1990. All right, our first is classical conditioning. This was developed by Ivan Pavlov, and this studied a conditioned reflex. So let's think about it. So when you go to the doctor for a regular checkup and they hit your knee with that little tool thing, what happens? Yeah, your leg kicks out, right? So does this happen because you intentionally make it happen? No, it's called a reflex. It's a natural reflex. So a reflex is an unconscious act that we do not intentionally plan to do. It just happens. So Pavlov believed that behavior occurred in this exact way, but he took it one step further. So understanding that animals or humans responded to a specific stimulus as a reflex or an unconscious act, he believed that animals and humans could also learn to associate an additional or conditioned stimulus to the same response or behavior. All right, so we're going to review this a little bit in our next slide so you can actually see the picture of it. All right, so classical conditioning. Pavlov used a dog to describe what this looked like, okay? So basically when you present a dog with food, it starts to salivate, okay? That happens naturally. That's the unconditioned response or the reflex, just like when we kick our knee out when the doctor hits our knee. When we blow a whistle, the dog does not salivate. Okay, we're not looking for any other behavior but salivation. That's the behavior that we're seeing right now, or we're looking at in this specific example. Now, during the conditioning period, we pair a whistle with food. And naturally, because of that reflex, the dog is going to salivate because of the food, not the whistle. However, once these two things are paired so many times, now after conditioning, the idea is that when the whistle is blown, the dog will salivate when food is not present. Because for so many times, the dog learned that, oh, whistle, food, I salivate, right? So now after conditioning, whistle, I salivate because there must be food, even if there is not food. Okay? Does that make... Well, it's a little bit confusing, but we'll get there. So basically, we have an unconditioned stimulus to an unconditioned response. We have a neutral stimulus. We have no conditioned response. Then we pair the two things, the unconditioned stimulus and the neutral stimulus, and we get an unconditioned response, which then after so many times, it results in a conditioned stimulus with a conditioned response. You're going to want to remember this picture. All right, our second one is John B. Watson. So John B. Watson was an American psychologist during the early 20th century, and he was actually named the father of behaviorism in the United States. So he said that the study of consciousness was flawed because it was too subjective. So meaning everybody's minds are a little bit different, which means there's no way we can really study it and no way it can really demonstrate any kind of behavior because people display similar behaviors. So, and because our minds are subjective and they're different from person to person, it can't describe behavior. That's what John B. Watson said. So now we shifted from mind to behavior with behaviorism. And instead of just observing behavior, we want to control for behavior. So typically, just like Pavlov, researchers and scientists use animals as subjects. However, Watson used humans. Little Albert study. So just like it's the same exact idea as what Pavlov did with the dogs, but we're using a human in this. So we have a neutral stimulus, which is our white rat, which produces no fear into the child, into little Albert. We have a steel bar that is hit with a hammer, producing a loud noise. And the natural reflex for the child is to cry, okay? Now we pair these two things, the white rat and the loud banging, so many times during conditioning, which causes the child to cry because of the loud banging. Just because we paired the two stimuluses together, now the child fears the rat without the loud banging. All right, our last one. B.F. Skinner. He was an American psychologist that developed operant conditioning, and this concentrated on how behavior is affected by its consequences. So what are your thoughts? Do we change our behavior based upon the consequences that you may face? Yeah, we absolutely do, right? I'm going to do my homework because I don't want to get a 0 and fail the class, right? So the consequence of not doing my homework is getting a 0. And I don't want to fail the class, so I'm going to do my homework. So we change our behavior based upon consequences all the time. So Skinner says that reinforcement and punishment are very huge factors in driving behaviors and why we do what we do. Skinner also created what we call the Skinner box. So this allows for the study of understanding the effects of reinforcement and punishment on behavior. So within this box, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff. There's a lever, there's lights, there's a speaker, there's what looks like a food chamber, and there's also on the floor, it's an electrical grid on the floor, okay? So this was a box that was created to put a rat in it, and the reinforcer in the Skinner box is a natural reinforcer, so in this case it's food. We all like food. Animals do too. So food is released when the lever is pressed a certain number of times or when a specific light comes on. So in this case, we're just going to use the lights as an example. So when the light turns green, I push the lever, I get food. However, the punishment is the electrified floor that you can see on the bottom there. If the rat pushes the lever when the light is red, then the rat would become shocked as a result, as a punishment for pushing the lever at the wrong time. So he would get shocked and no food would come out. Okay, so now the rat learns, okay, I only push the lever when the light is green because then I get what I want. All right, so now we're going to do a little active learning activity. I need you guys to form groups of 2 or 3 people. So 2 or 3 people. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to present a whole bunch of different case studies on the next several slides, and they will either be examples of operant conditioning or classical conditioning that we discussed today. So you're going to scan the following QR code that you'll see on the next slide, and it's going to lead you to a Google Forms site that you can select your answer choice. So when you read the case study that's on the slide, I want you to consult and discuss with your group which answer choice represents the case study best, okay? So this will help you to kind of see if you understood the different theories that we reviewed today and just kind of check for understanding, as well as help you can discuss among groups to then promote group ideas and consulting with your peers. Okay? All right, so coming up next, we're going to talk about social learning theory and the legacy of behaviorism, which is all also included in this chapter.